Alright, welcome back to B Mother Reviews, everybody. And you know, for a character that's so vital to the X-Men mythos, and really so vital to so many X-Men statues over the years, you've seen bits and pieces of this guy under the X-Men's feet for years and years. There's surprisingly few full-bodied, intact Sentinel statues available on the market today. This one here is the art scale 1/10 scale. Yeah, you heard that right. This is only 1/10 scale statue from Iron Studios. And I'm going to tell you whether you need it in your collection coming up next. Alright, the Sentinel is one of the earliest and most iconic enemies in the X-Men stable. They were originally invented by Dr. Bolivar Trask, who saw this emerging threat to humankind, and that of course is the mutants. He designed the Sentinels to hunt down and kill mutants on sight. Now, there's been various different kinds of Sentinels invented since that time. You have your sort of standard run-of-the-mill, we'll call it kind of orc fodder, and that's, I think, what this guy is here. They're sort of intended to be destroyed fairly easily by the X-Men. But there's also much stronger versions as well. There's the Master Mold, the very first Sentinel ever created, which became sentient and not only learned how to upgrade and repair itself and its army of Sentinels, it also made the decision that, well, maybe I shouldn't just take over mutants, I should take over humankind as well. So he was a very powerful and ominous threat for the entire world, really. There's Nimrod, who's a very formidable foe as well. There's the Terminator-esque human-looking Sentinels that can blend in with humans. And of course, there's the Omega Sentinels from the Days of Future Past storyline, who became so powerful, they not only succeeded in hunting down and killing the mutants, but all superheroes, and actually succeeded in enslaving mankind in that future timeline. So, just an iconic and essential character for the X-Men mythos. Now, what you want to know, though, is this statue essential for your collection? Well, we'll talk more about that, starting with sculpt and design next. Alright, so first off, Iron Studios does not release information about who sculpted their statues or painted them or anything like that. So we just have to give credit to the entire Iron Studios team, and most statues are a team effort for sure. Now, for Sentinels, the one defining feature over the years has been the head. They have kind of this domed head with this sort of crown-like feature around the forehead, the flat nose, and kind of the humanoid-looking face. And this statue definitely has that. Now, from the neck down, though, almost no two Sentinels are alike. They've been featured in countless comics, movies, cartoons, and they all seem to be a little bit different. This guy here seems to lean a little bit more towards that original classic look, I think. The armor is fairly basic looking, but they have amped up the details a little bit. They've added nuts and bolts around the armor there. You can see the hydraulics and the hinges and the knees, the hip joints, the elbow, and in the finger joints as well. So they've given you that extra detail that you probably want on a more modern statue like this. So I think they've done a nice job on the robot itself. The base, however, is where things kind of fall apart a little bit. Now, the other two Sentinels in this X-Men versus Sentinels series are sitting on bases that are probably X-Mansion, the Xavier School for Gifted Youngsters type of base. This one here, I'm assuming, is also in that environment, but I can't quite tell exactly what it is. I think there's maybe a fountain here down by his foot, and maybe that's what these two pieces of rubble are from, but I'm not 100% sure. The ice, we'll talk a little bit about why that ice is there later on in the review, but they did a nice job with that ice formation around his foot. Otherwise, the base is kind of basic, but how many of you people watching this video up till now have been looking at the base? The star of the show is up here with the Sentinel itself, and I think they did a pretty good job with that. All right, we're going to move on, discuss the paint on this statue, and we'll start with the Sentinel itself. Now, I actually own the old Sideshow Sentinel maquette, and that statue has definitely a brighter, kind of a more pearlized metallic finish on the armor, whereas this guy has a much more matte finish on it, and I actually like that kind of look. They did a really nice job with that. The colors are the traditional Sentinel colors with the blue and the pink. Sometimes the blue is a little more purple, but the blue also works. There's a lot of weathering all over the statue, the black scratch marks and scorch marks, making this guy look like he's been through a battle. The one issue with the paint on the Sentinel itself that I don't love is that they gave it this kind of rust-colored wash in all of the panel lines and all the joints. You can definitely see it on the finger joints. And my only issue with that, it doesn't look terrible, is that, I think a Sentinel shouldn't be constructed of like a ferrous metal because A, it would rust, and that would be a big problem for a giant robot like this. B, it'd be very heavy, very difficult to allow this guy to lift off and fly. And C, probably most importantly, it would be magnetic, making this guy easy pickings for someone like Magneto. But that is probably more just the nitpicky fanboy in me. The paint itself does not look that bad. On the base, however, things are not quite as detailed. There's not as much depth there as I would like. It's a very basic paint job, kind of a muddy brown, and that's about it. So definitely I think they could have gone a little bit extra with the detail on the base. But again, like I said earlier, the star of the show is this guy right here, and the paint on the robot itself is actually pretty good. All right, let's talk about the production quality on this statue, and it is one massive piece. It stands just under 30 inches tall. At its widest, so fingertip to fingertip, it's around 31 inches. And even the base at its widest is almost 2 feet wide. So this is a beast of a piece. You're going to have to plan accordingly for your shelves, and it is quite heavy as well. So a statue of this size, as you might expect, does come in 2 separate boxes. One box for the base pieces and one box for the robot itself. Now there is an assembly guide in the box that kind of walks you through how to put it together. I would suggest having someone else available to help you out, because with the legs, the left leg and the hips are joined, they're one piece, and the right leg is separate, and you kind of have to drop them into the base simultaneously and then connect them together as you're doing that. And having a second person to give you a hand, definitely going to make that easier. The rest of the robot itself, though, very basic. Everything connects together with very strong magnets, so no issues there. The one thing to point out about the base is that the ice and the base are actually 2 separate pieces, and they're not joined together. So the ice just kind of butts up against the base in the back, which is fine for display. It totally works for this piece. The one issue with that is if you ever have to move it, you're basically forced to take this thing completely apart. I know, I mentioned very heavy statue. It does have a good quality feel about it. So production wise on this piece, I don't have much to complain about. Alright, so just a few important notes about this statue. This is the regular version of Sentinel number 3 in the Iron Studios X-Men vs. Sentinel diorama. Now, the deluxe version of those statues come with various 1/10 scale X-Men that you can attach to the body. This guy's got an Archangel that attaches up here. Of course, an Iceman around the foot, thus why we have this big ice formation around his foot. With the regular version, you can purchase those X-Men separate from the statue, but it's very important to note that they do not connect to the body. If you want the version that has the X-Men connecting to the body, you have to get the deluxe version of this piece. But, as I said, you can buy various X-Men 1/10 scale pieces from Iron Studios and use them as proximity pieces, and I have one example here. This is the 1/10 scale Bishop, and I have to give some props to Iron Studios on a couple things here. These 1/10 scale statues have increased in quality and detail by a wide margin over the years. The original ones came on just a flat black pentagon base. They're very low detail pieces. This is almost like a 1/4 scale statue shrunken down. All kinds of detail, environmental base. The paint on it is pretty good. You got the action pose. And number two, when Iron Studios says they're going to start a line, X-Men, for example, they go all in. We've got Bishop here. This is a character who almost never gets made. You got other characters like Forge and Mojo and Mr. Sinister, Pyro, Blob. All of these characters that get made by nobody else, you can get them here and you can create your custom X-Men scene around this gigantic Sentinel if you like. So very cool statue set from Iron Studios, but important to keep in mind that the separate X-Men do not connect to the regular version of this piece. All right, we'll give this guy one final spin as we wrap up the review here. Still kind of boggles my mind that there are so few Sentinel statues on the market today, but this guy here from Iron Studios is definitely the biggest, most dynamic, and one of the most intact Sentinel statues for your collection today. They do offer one other standalone Sentinel, but it's much more heavily battle damaged than this guy. So I think this is a great statue for any X-Men collection. It is large enough that it can fit into even your 1/4 scale shelves. I know it won't scale properly with them, but this is a beast of a statue and I think it can still look pretty good in your collection. So definitely consider hunting this one down if you are a big X-Men collector like myself. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this review of the Iron Studios Sentinel number 3. This is the regular version as I mentioned earlier. Stay tuned to the channel. I don't post videos as regularly as I used to, but I will still continue to post. So make sure to subscribe and we'll talk to you guys soon.